Welcome, Binge Watchers, where we talk about the stories and characters we love and the shows they live in. My name is Ron, and let's talk about the Netflix original 13 Reasons Why. 13 Reasons Why tells the story of Hannah Baker, a teenager who committed suicide, but before she did, she made tapes and recorded her story. The 13 reasons that led to her ending her own life. Each reason is a person. The people on the tapes range from friends who let her down to people who did terrible things to her. The show focuses on Clay Jensen, one of the kids who are on the tapes and went to the same school as Hannah. The story follows him as he listens to the tapes and tries to recreate what happened, make sense out of it, hold people accountable, and grieve for Hannah. While Clay is pretty much the main character, the show explores how other kids in the high school and the things they did or didn't do, how it affected Hannah and how her suicide affected them. This is a complicated show to talk about, so first let's talk about the show, the performances, the plot, all of that, and then let's talk about the issues this show tries to deal with. The performances in this show, especially Dylan Minnette as Clay Jensen, were very strong. Clay, in my opinion, was the best written character and the most fleshed out. He made the most sense. He reacts to stuff in the way that I thought he would, and he had very few "no one would ever do that" moments. I just thought that the actor did a really great job. This is a complicated character, and Clay manages to capture a lot of the things that a teenager goes through, especially a teenager who's not really a social outcast, but is also not super popular, but is like mostly reasonable. I thought the other performances in this show were okay. They did the thing that they were supposed to do in the story. Most of them were pretty good. Some of them were not as strong, but Clay really was the outstanding character for me. But just stop using Star Wars as the thing that's supposed to make the character look like some weirdo geek boy. That worked in Stranger Things, but not today. If you want obscure, geeky, but still massive, I'd go with Warhammer 40k or something. The biggest issue I had with this show was the pacing. The episodes felt incredibly long, and the story in the show is genuinely interesting, and I wanted to learn more about what happened and why it happened, but the show keeps throwing things in the way of that. Character building is great and essential, but almost every episode at some point slows down to almost a halt before actually getting to the story. Also, there are quite a few characters that don't make sense. Some of these characters, it feels like this person doesn't exist. I understand that I didn't grow in a small American town. I grew up in a mid-sized Israeli town, but still, I thought the show was good and the story was interesting and important, and I was interested throughout, but some of these characters I just didn't buy. It's hard to talk about what I think about the story, the message, the issues this show deals with. It's hard to talk about that without going into spoilers, but I'll try. The show presents a case where a girl was driven to suicide and does a really good job in showing you the different sides of that. It shows you the side that's angry. She made her choice. It's not anyone's fault but hers. She was selfish and took the easy way out. It shows you the side of blame. We could have done more. She was asking for help. We could have done other things and we could have done them differently. And it shows you the side that's dismissive. She was a drama queen and she did it for attention. Ultimately, what I feel this show does well is say that maybe she was the type of girl that wanted to make every drama about her and find a way to twist every story to make herself the victim. You know, maybe she was just doing stuff for attention, and maybe it doesn't matter. Because what 13 Reasons shows us is the different points along the way that things could have been done or said that would have made all the difference. And even if you are angry, even if you are like, this fucking teenagers, they think that everything is about them, she thinks everything is about her, she should stop whining, that doesn't matter, because most teenagers feel like everything is about them. We're all unbelievably stupid when we're teenagers, but it's still better to have a self-obsessed teenager who is alive and will eventually grow out of it, because the reality is that this type of thing happens. Kids have killed themselves because they were bullied or embarrassed on social media or at school. It happens regardless of what we think. What we think doesn't matter in this case. When we say stuff like, kids today, they spend too much time on Facebook and on Twitter, and they put too much importance on it, and they don't understand, and back when I was in high school, no one gives a shit. I mean, it doesn't matter what happened when I was in high school. It was terrible, by the way, but I made it. It doesn't matter if you and I think that hurting yourself over a Facebook post is stupid, because to them, it's not stupid. So it's important to talk about it, and it's important to understand the signs, and it's important to understand and not dismiss things that are happening that maybe we feel differently about. So I do think that this show deals with an important subject, and while I think that mostly the show does a good thing by telling a difficult story, and it tells it pretty well, I think the show does two things wrong. First, I do think the show over-romanticizes suicide. I think it would be extremely unhealthy for someone like Hannah Baker to watch this show. I get why the show does this. It's because a lot of the show is told through Hannah's perspective, and she is who she is, but it's something to consider. I think this is a show for adults about teenagers, not for teenagers. Second, and this is not really a spoiler, but it's right on the line between spoiler and not spoiler, I think the show kind of shoots itself in the foot by making Hannah go through too many terrible things. Towards the end of the show, it feels like they had to further justify Hannah and her actions, so they put her through something terrible, which I felt undermines the whole thing. The whole point was that she was going through a lot of the things that other kids were going through as well, so some people can just dismiss it as she's just a drama queen, high school is awful, and fucking deal with it. She even gets called out on it. The whole point up to that episode was that it's just harder for some kids. It's harder for them to deal with it, and we should understand that. You don't have to go through something awful in order to, be able to feel bad about something. So by putting Hannah through that extra terrible thing, they made it about an equally important and terrible point, but a different one that the rest of the show was not so much about. And I actually have a lot more to say about this, but I think that's pretty much all I can say without spoilers. So, bottom line, should you watch it? I think you should. It's an interesting show. It's a very divisive topic, so it will inspire some different opinions and conversations, which is usually a good thing, and it's a well-made show. I don't think the show itself was crazy good, but I did enjoy it, and it does have a fantastic character and performance in Clay Jensen. And the story is very interesting. I did feel that at times they went a little bit too far, not because these things don't happen or are not as important, but because they didn't serve the story or the point that the show is trying to make. If you can take something out of a story and the story would stay pretty much the same and would have a similar impact, then that thing probably doesn't belong in the story. I also felt that the show had a pretty big pacing problem. It's a lot longer than it needed to be, but all around, it's a solid drama about something that should be talked about. What about you? Have you watched 13 Reasons Why? I'm really interested to learn how you guys feel about how they chose to approach this topic. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. It really helps out a lot. And if you're finding binge watchers for the first time, welcome. I'd like to invite you to join the binge watchers community. Come talk about TV with us. It's a lot of fun. Subscribe to the channel. But in any case, keep binging, and I will see you next time.